Hello, what are we, British?
Hello.
Governor.
That's it,
Hello,
Governor.
Governor.
Welcome in. Welcome into my LoSo LifeStyle with Mary Schepp. I am not her.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to our friends at YouTube.
I think I'd shock a lot of people if I showed up bald.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yes, you would.
Should get a bald cap and just be fun one day.
And in 3, 2, 1, we are live on the Book of Face.
Woohoo.
Hello, Facebook.
Happy New Year, Facebook friends.
Here's how special this is. This is the first live show 21/6 is producing in the new year.
Yes. And I get to be the show.
And you are the show. Man,
I told you I was special.
Is that exciting? That's very exciting.
Exciting.
Hang in there with us. We're about a minute and a half out from going live. Peter Galt, good.
That's an
good morning.
eternity.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you with us, Peter. Hey, Pete. Just so you know, take a look at the schedule on our back office. I've got a little bit of work to do. I ran everything up to I think the last day of the year. So I've got to,
Oopsies.
yeah. So our last day has been kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
That's funny.
But we'll get it fixed. I apologize. That's just the way that I had it. It was very interesting. Well, you know what they say. Stupid is.
Stupid does.
Stupid does.
That's okay. It's funny how long a minute is.
Yeah. I had too much salt on my brain.
You're oversalted. You probably are.
Well roasted, oversalted.
Yeah, well, that'll happen. I can imagine. I'm probably oversalted myself I did 2 full days of, actually today will make 3 days of cooking. I've been stocking up between my manicotti and turkey pot pie and rigatoni soup.
Yeah. I went to school with rigatoni.
And I brought you some manicotti.
Hi, Stephanie Conley. Thank you. Happy New Year. We are now going to bump out here quiet on the set as we get ready to go live.
It's not quite my normal music. For those of you loyal listeners, it might sound a little bit different for the new year. Trying something out.
So since it's a new year, we thought maybe we'd put some good cooking music on behind you.
This is hilarious.
Very inspirational.
This is cooking music. Look it up. Google cooking music, and this will probably be your option. That's hilarious.
Welcome to 21/6 The Net and my LoSo Lifestyle with our host, Mary Schepp. Let's turn this off as quickly as possible.
Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year. Hey, that's Jim Anderson. Haven't seen you in a while. Busy with his cast iron. My cast iron buddy. And thanks to my dad, I am loaded on cast iron. My stepmom went out hunting and sent me, she legitimately squeezed it into the if it fits, it ships postal boxes.
Nice.
One of them was taped with a sticker on it that, from the post office says, "We're sorry." It was completely grenaded, but all of the pieces made it in one piece. It's just taped back together because it's got, 50 pounds of cast iron pans in the middle.
I bake every day on cast iron. I think it's the best.
Cast iron. Yeah. So that was one of my Christmas presents is a whole set, the fryer, the pan, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I like it because you never have to clean it.
No, you don't. As long as Jim would say, as long as it's seasoned properly,
that's it.
You're good to go.
Yeah,
you're good to go.
Absolutely.
Stephanie Colony, Happy New Year.
Boy, what a great New Year. Hopefully you had a good time. I think a lot of people probably ruined their low sodium,
including me,
over the past couple of weeks since we've been gone. But
so it's funny because as I was saying how I was cooking, we didn't really do anything fantastic for the holidays. Just me and my husband. Uneventful was fantastic.
That's sometimes the best.
But after cooking for 3 days, you'd think that we would have had manicotti for dinner or
something,
something nice. Because we just spent hours and hours and hours prepping and cooking massive quantities of stuff. My fridge is packed for days and days, and we had hot dogs.
Yeah.
Like the one thing they were Boar's Head hot dogs, so I can eat them. But
always good.
It's still funny that you spend all this time cooking and making these beautiful things, and you're like, I don't feel like cooking anymore. I'm just gonna have a hot dog.
That's it.
Yeah. So that was one of my meals here for New Year's. Hey, Dad.
Hell, good to have you with us, man.
So 2019, we started this show in September, and it's 4 months. It's as I'm typing my notes for today, realizing how much stuff that we've talked about in the past 4 months. And beginning this was like, how can you talk about salt for an hour every week? And it's surprisingly easy. We've been through what, 16 episodes now?
16.
That's crazy. And sauces, I think, was your episode.
Yeah,
you got pretty saucy.
I got saucy, absolutely. And I mean, 16 episodes talking with salt without getting salty.
Maybe a little salty from time to time, but
some of the listeners might.
Yes,
right?
maybe. Maybe a little salty.
So it all started back with the first with the first episode, and you talked about what is salt.
Yeah, and I got so much feedback and lashback from it, just because everybody has an opinion about salt. Everybody has an opinion about their diets.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, salt is literally just a compound that is an electrolyte that helps regulate your muscles and all of the things in your body. But it's necessary. Mm-hmm. But the biggest question is always salt is salt is salt is salt. So everyone says, pink salt's the healthy salt.
Oh yeah, the sea salt or Himalayan sea salt.
Right, the Himalayan sea salt. And it's salt. And I mean, when you break it down, it does have more minerals and whatever compounds in it. But I think I said on that show that you could lick a banana and get more potassium than you're going to get out of pink salt. Because you're, even on a lot of it, even if you put a tablespoon of that stuff on your dish, it's like 0.1% of it is potassium or magnesium or some other compound other than sodium and chloride. So you're still predominantly getting sodium and chloride. There's no, nutritional, you still need sodium. So if you're going to use it and you need it, then great. If that's what you want, then so be it. But salt is salt. You can't fool yourself into thinking I'm eating healthy and low sodium because it's pink.
True.
Yeah. Or gray or Celtic or any other salt, because there's a million trillion of them.
Happy New Year, Gary Huang. Glad to see you from Singapore. Glad to have you with us, brother. So as we talk about salt, the interesting thing is food channels have become so prevalent. Cooking shows.
Yep.
I was watching on Hulu last night this chef, and they're looking at burgers. They're just chasing the best burger, and there's a $200 burger. But the interesting thing is, and I'd be interested to see with the listeners too, is they say, hey, you need to season. And when they season, they're like,
right, handfuls at a time.
Yeah.
My husband and I were just talking about this because we both love Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
And he makes Gordon Ramsay's eggs, and they're fantastic.
And Gordon, glad to have you with us.
Right.
I'm sure you're
Absolutely.
listening.
Swing by. That'd be fantastic. I'd love that. I'd love every minute of that. But his burger, it's, you season the meat, and then you put the patty, and then you season the patty, and then you put it in the pan, and you season it in the pan, and then you finish it, and you set it aside to rest, and you season it when it's resting. And then if you're lucky, they put a finishing salt on it that's like, holy cow. And he goes, could you even calculate how much salt it is? Now, it's high. It's not nearly as high as processed food. But at the same time, you're like, why the hell do you need so much?
So much.
And it's just insane to me. And I've always known that things were heavily salted, because I mean, long before this all happened, I've always been a cook. Same thing. When you boil stuff, they always say, make it salty like the sea. So I would literally scoop a handful, like a quarter cup of salt, and dump it in the water to make potatoes or pasta. And you look back at it and go, why? In one of our episodes here, we'll talk in a minute, was getting used to salt. Like, you had to get used to that at some point, because you didn't always do that. And that's the cooking shows. They have such an influence over people, and they'll shift so easily to different things, to different diets, to different fads. And everybody's doing gluten-free, so let's do, or kale.
Big.
Kale was a huge thing or avocado toast now.
Oh, yeah. Bacon,
so, and they
everything
salt
bacon, right?
They salt the avocado toast. You smear avocado on toast, maybe some grilled onions, and then they still salt it. Why did you have to do that? Yeah. Why? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
And it's interesting too, since your show, food programs are everywhere, and anywhere in Asia, especially East. And so, yeah, man.
Right.
So true, Gary. But since your show started, I've been paying more attention to my
That's what Pete
salt
says too,
intake.
yeah.
And Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, just a great inventor. He would not hire somebody. He would take, if he was interviewing you, he'd take you out to eat and at his house, and then he would watch you. And if you salted the food before you tasted it, he wouldn't hire the person.
That's awesome.
For a couple of reasons, because his thought is you're changing what's out there. How do you know it hasn't been seasoned already? But you're changing what was placed in front of you without even trying it. So as an inventor, you need to be able to try things to make it better.
Right.
So since your show, My LoSo Lifestyle, has aired, I now taste everything specifically for salt and go,
like when you stole my French fries.
Yeah.
I'll never forget.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, like, yesterday cooking bacon, and then, I'm tasting, I'm like, boy, the bacon's pretty salty.
It is.
And it's just, all you're doing is peeling it out and slapping it on the grill, but it's very salty.
So now here's the funny thing about that is I use straight up pork fat in a lot of my dishes, because pork itself, not brined, not whatever, the fat itself just tends to lend itself to a saltier, once it's that whole Maillard reaction, once it's actually grilled or sauteed, it lends a saltiness. So a tablespoon of pork fat brings a lot of flavor to a dish. And the same with bacon. The bacon itself is the salty bit. So if you take the bacon grease, it's relatively low sodium. So you can use the bacon grease to get that bacony flavor in a dish without adding the sodium that the bacon would add.
Yeah.
So if I make bacon for my husband, I'll use some of the grease to make my eggs. So he gets the salty bacon. And yes, I will steal a piece, because if there's bacon in the house and if you don't eat it, there's something inherently wrong with you.
Yeah. Are you human?
Right. Are you human? But it's you can find other ways. And it's funny that pork tends to be one of those things that is a little bit saltier.
Yeah. So Gary says salt is an integral part of Asian cooking, as thousands of years ago, salt was primarily used to preserve raw and cooked foods. Asian was slower in the introduction of fridges and storage infrastructure as compared to the Western society. So
now it's funny that in the act of preservation, salt necessarily wasn't a preservative itself, like canning goods. The preserving is the heating process that preserves it, that kills the bacteria, and then you seal it so nothing can get in. The preservation of salt was more like a fermentation process. So it was controlled fermentation. The salt stopped the bacteria from growing or killed it fast enough that it could turn into good bacteria. So where you get fermented soy products, soybean products, and over time I've discovered that those soy products affect me a lot less than added salt, because that controlled fermentation, it still creates a balanced product. And I still react, but it's a lot less than if I just added salt or eat a processed food. It was kind of funny that way.
That is interesting. Then one of your shows was cooking for kids.
Yes. I made a lot of new friends and I found a lot of people that I grew up with in this area that knew me because they see me on the show and say, holy crap, I know her. And all of a sudden I got a slew of private messages. Do you remember me? I'm so-and-so from high school. You remember me? Remember me? Remember me? I was like, okay, I remember all you people. I want help with my kid. And I mean, I don't have kids, so I get lashed back because of that. How do you know if you don't have kids? I love kids. I do a lot of events with kids. I have nieces, nephews, all of those things. And if you get them involved, and you switch the perspective and you add value to a meal, so many people treat it as a punishment. If you don't eat this, you can't get up. If you don't eat this, you can't have dessert. If you eat this, you can get this. And it gives it a bad flavor, and it creates a negative food relationship from a very early age. So you create picky eaters. As an adult, if you hand me something squirmy, I'm going to have to be exposed to it a bunch of times before I like it.
That's right.
Same with kids. It's all about exposure and perspective. If you make it an okay thing, they're more likely to have it, especially if they see you eating it on a regular basis. It's like, if you don't want it, fine, don't have it. I'm going to have it. It's going to be on the table.
Right.
10 more times, they're finally going to go, okay, maybe I'll try some. And then they'll try it. That and the fact that their stomachs are really tiny, and technically so are ours. So
supposed to be.
Right.
I speak for a lot of Americans. Exactly. Mine's not so much anymore.
Like Pete cries every time I mention a serving size. He's like, I just don't get the hand size serving. That just isn't right.
Especially for a guy who's got small hands like me. It's not
you
very
get two
good.
crackers. That's funny. But they do. They have tiny little tummies. And if you get them involved in the cooking process, and that's where you see, like, we were talking food shows. All of these food shows that are getting children involved.
Yeah.
And now these kids are the ones that are the explorers and saying, I want to make crab today. And you're looking at them going, gross.
I love crab.
Right. Well, let's see. I haven't had a lot of good crab. I've had a lot of bad crab.
Well, that's a whole story. That might be what's in your loaf. I don't know.
Well, that's a good loaf topic. The one place that I did have good crab legs, I was up visiting my sister in Sturgis. And we went out for crab legs. They had all you can eat crab legs one night during the rally, and it was fantastic. That was one of my only good crab leg memories. All the other ones were gross.
That is it. Stephanie Conley says, we did our first salt garlic crust on prime rib. Since we take the crust off before eating, what would be okay for you, or is it still way too salty?
So
I would, if I could answer that real quick. Give it to me and let me try it.
So I used to make my prime rib that way. And there's also a turkey recipe that my dad will probably remember over at Marvin's house. They would take chicken wire and then just a sheet.
Wow.
And they would pack big 5-gallon fishing or paint buckets with salt and water. And they would put a layer of salt, set the turkey on it. And as you or someone else would lift up the chicken wire sheet, you would pack it and create this salt casing around the bird.
Wow.
And they would take the burn pit, just a good old bonfire burn pit, separate the fire, put the bird in the bottom and put the coals back over the bird and just leave it for 2 hours.
Wow.
It was beautiful. It was so unbelievably good. But you're thinking it's going to be the saltiest thing on the planet. And essentially the water evaporates, the salt creates a cast, and the bird just cooks in its own juices. So it does raise the salt content of the meat. Because it wasn't brined, the chances of that salt compound getting all the way into the center of the prime rib, but without actually testing it, you're never going to know.
Right.
So as someone who has to watch their salt, it's just better that I avoid something of that nature or just take a little bit of taste. Because when you have an unsalted palate, you can tell in 2 seconds if something is salty.
Sure.
So it's pretty easy, but I probably would eat like 6 slices of it and just suffer the consequences.
know what happens, right?
And I just like prime rib. It's really tasty stuff.
But now with what you do, we also had a show about going out to eat. To that point, you get invited over to somebody's house, and it's a party. It's not necessarily you just come on over, because if it's just you, they probably know, okay, we got to watch it. But it's a party, or you're going out to eat at a steakhouse, or 1776 or something cool,
Stuckies.
Or hibachi, Stuckies. Yeah. And all of a sudden now, right? I mean, you got to watch what you eat.
We do. And it goes back to what I say about 1,000,000 times is don't be a dick. Don't go there expecting a restaurant to make all these exceptions for you when they don't on a normal basis. If a restaurant advertises that they do allergy-free, gluten-free, whatever, or heart healthy, then you can kind of have that expectation that you can go and get something off that menu, and it should be cooked that way. But when you walk into an average restaurant, especially if it's a chain, they are prepackaged, shipped,
Frozen,
in mass quantities to these places. But when you get mom and pop kind of places, you can just call up in a not busy time frame and say, can you just take 2 seconds to look at the box and tell me if that chicken already has 300 milligrams before you guys use it? And the funny thing is 2 things happen. A, you're prepared, you don't piss them off, and they're not going to spit in your food.
Right.
Don't mess with people who play with your food. That's just food 101. But at the same time, a lot of times you educate them and they go, holy crap, I didn't know that the chicken was 300 milligrams and unhealthy before I seasoned it and fed it to you people. Maybe I should buy unbrined chicken or something else. And it's kind of a twofold win-win when you go out. But I found a lot of local places here are very accommodating.
The soup of the day is not baked fresh. That's it's in a big plastic bag that they
for chain restaurants. Yeah. It's in it. I remember back in the day working at restaurants, and the ones that made their soups. We had the cream soups create a skin on top. It's unavoidable. It just is unavoidable. And as the staff, one of our tasks was to stir the soup. Like every time you walked into the kitchen, just stir the soup real quick so it doesn't cause a skin.
The skin.
Because it's not unedible. It's not something that's going to kill you. But if you serve a customer a bowl of soup that's paying $30 to have a steak dinner and you serve them cream of something soup with a big thick chunk of skin floating on the side, they're going to be a little ticked off at you. So I remember going, every time I went in the kitchen, somebody would just stir the soup real quick while they're talking to you, and then they would walk away like it was some weird OCD tick that everybody in the kitchen had. But at least you knew it was real soup.
But you knew it was real soup. Gary says somewhat similar to a salt-baked fish in Thailand. The entire fish is also crusted in salt powder and shell. A salt powder shell and baked. Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah.
Now, you talked a little bit earlier in the show about you and your husband spent most of the past 2 weeks cooking.
Mm-hmm.
One of your shows was finding time to cook.
Right.
And that's interesting when you have the need that you have, the low sodium need that you have. So you said that your refrigerator is packed. So for how long will that?
Long time. Well, I tend to give away a lot of my food. Hence the reason why you have manicotti in the fridge. So I give away a lot of my stuff.
Yeah.
But it does, when you think of a big pot of mashed potatoes, and if you do an entire, 5 or 10 pound bag of potatoes, and when it comes down to single servings, I can make like 15 or 20 bags of mashed potatoes that are in my freezer. And the same with my sauce. So if it's 2 cups per little Ziploc bag that I do, and then throw them in my freezer. Now you got to mark things, because there is occasions where you'll pull out pizza sauce to put on pasta and realize that it's not pasta sauce, it's pizza sauce. Yeah. So it still tastes good. It's just different. But it makes, you can make a good 6 months worth of stuff in a couple days.
Yeah.
So to cook for a week on a Sunday or a Tuesday or whatever day you have off is not as hard as people think it is. To prep in advance, even stuff like vegetables, chopping vegetables up. If you buy a bag of onions and chop them up, slice them up, whatever, and throw them in the little crisper tray in your drawer, if you have a hot dog in the middle of the week, you can put onions on it instead of just having a plain hot dog.
Yeah.
So it feels a little bit more gourmet eating at home than being out.
So as we're in 2020 now, and thanks everybody, you're listening to 21.6 and Net here in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people out there who are listening. There's a lot of people who have made resolutions to eat better and do things like that. I suppose the first change you have to do is the way that you shop then.
Mm-hmm.
Because most Americans are running out and grabbing a frozen this or a frozen that, and because they don't necessarily plan out meals like that.
And as much as I plan, but I don't. So it's funny because people are like, oh, you plan. No, I kind of wing it by the seat of my pants. Like, hey, I got 3 days off. What do I want to make? And this is on sale, that's on sale, and the other's on sale. So I'm going to grab that, throw it in a basket, and come home and decide that this is what I'm going to make out of it. And then we eat that for a long period of time. And even if it's frozen, it lasts for so long.
Right.
You can do whatever you want with it. But you do have to kind of switch your mindset into, if you're going to make a resolution or if you're going to set a goal, you set yourself up for success and create a list and say, okay, what do I like to eat? If you're primarily eating crap and potato chips and popcorn and fried foods, then you say, okay, maybe I'm going to eat, get an air fryer. So if I'm going to have fried foods, it's going to be fried a little bit healthier, or I'm going to learn how to bake my chicken and make it a little bit healthier than just flat out fried crap. So you set yourself up for success by switching your mindset just a tiny little bit, and you still get the stuff you want without suffering through it. And then eventually, if it's just a horrible experience, you're going to revert back to your old ways.
Yeah. And that's one thing that we're trying in the Jones house is we got the Instapot or whatever, which I think is a crock pot, but
essentially well, it's, I think it also offers like pressure cooking. So it speeds things up.
So, we're taking a look at, rather than just getting all the frozen, chicken nuggets and things like that, is, all right, let's take a look at some recipes and let's start making better food for us. So.
And the same thing, you pre-season stuff. And even with that, if you buy a huge batch of chicken and pre-season it, especially with an Instapot or something like that, you can throw it in there frozen, and suddenly you've got something fantastic in a very short period of time. Whereas before, if you crock pot it or whatever, you put it in the oven, it takes such a long period of time. And that's why the Instapots and the air fryers are so successful, is because of that reason. Yeah. Just don't put 7,000 pounds of some kind of sauce on top.
That's it. And speaking of sauces, of course, you and I shared that that episode. Stan, Happy New Year. Glad to have you with us. Melinda, hey, how are you? Glad to have you with us all the way from Iowa. Is there a particular bag or container for freezing single servings you recommend?
So you can buy the fancy freezer ones. I've done that. Spent more money because they say freezer on them.
Yeah.
They do last a little bit longer. The funny thing is if you suck all the air out of it, it gets freezer burn a lot less. That's usually the primary component in freezer burn. I just use the plain old zipper bags, as long as it's not going to rupture on me. So if you get the cheapo off-brand super thin ones, when they freeze, they're going to split, which means when they thaw, they're going to leak all over. So if you spend a little bit more money on the nice zip bags, just the single serving sandwich size bags, it holds 2 cups of soup, which technically is 2 servings, but we've been over this a million times that's just not enough for one person to eat unless you're tiny. Because I'll eat I'll eat 6 cups of soup if you give it to me.
That's right.
But just the plain old zip bags work fine for me. And you can get the machines, the vacuum seal machines. I have one, and it's great for marinating meat. However, you have to spend a decent chunk of money to get one that will vacuum seal liquid. Because then you make the mistake that I did, where you think it vacuum seals liquid and it doesn't, and it sucks all the liquid out, and then it doesn't shut off, and it just starts spitting liquid all over your floor, which my cats loved, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sauces are something that you and I talked about, that if you want flavor, if you want to add flavor to a meal, and you don't want to, be throwing pounds of salt on like they do on the cooking shows and in restaurants, a good sauce is a good way to do that.
It is. It's twofold. It's a good way to get a salt bomb that you didn't know you were getting, because a lot of times in sauces, it's hidden and it doesn't taste as salty because there's so many other flavor components. You don't realize how much salt you're getting. So you go to a restaurant, and if there's a sauce, I can guarantee, even if it's a butter sauce, people are like, oh, it's a butter sauce. Butter is 100 milligrams per tablespoon. So when they add a cup of butter to something and reduce it down and coat it with everything, and the pasta soaks it up, it's surprisingly a high sodium thing. But you can manipulate those sauces with other things and other flavor components, like roasting your garlic or roasting your vegetables, and doing those kinds of things to enhance the flavor of the sauce. Or something I found is the fire roasted sun-dried tomatoes are, if they don't have any other, like the Italian kind and stuff like that, have seasoning to it, so it's salted. But just the straight up, no frills fire roasted tomatoes, you get, I think it's like 15 milligrams of sodium. It's nothing. And it adds a huge punch. So you can do that. Or my go-to, which is reducing wine. You're
an onion, garlic, wine person.
Yeah, almost all my sauces start with that. It adds a huge punch of flavor. And the number one question I get is, what can you use in place of wine? So the alcohol does primarily cook out over a long period of time, but like the Saganaki, the flaming cheese, does not cook out.
Oh, that smells so bad. Hey, Alex,
you're still essentially getting a shot. Now, granted, you split that up between a couple of people because it's whatever. But if you have someone who cannot have alcohol, like me with liver disease, or someone who's a recovering alcoholic, even the smallest bit could trigger them.
Sure.
So there are a lot of people that look for an alcohol-free, and they turn to cooking wine. The problem with cooking wine is it's 95 milligrams per tablespoon with sodium.
Yeah.
So you have to be very sparing with it. So if you take 6 ounces, like I do with wine, and reduce it, of cooking wine, you might as well just go buy a stock, because it's just as salty. So I have found if you use a juice that is unsweetened, unadulterated, like full-blown bitter cranberry juice, bitter grape juice, you can, or carrot juice, you can reduce that down and get a similar saucy type flavor and component, and add some stuff to it.
And sauces, of course, It can be thin, thick.
Hmm?
Then it can be creamy. I mean,
cheese sauces, cream sauces, bolognese sauces. There's about 8 million mother sauces, they call them. But I always say master one. You don't. There's so much out there, and it's the same with food and lifestyle change and diet change. Everything can be so overwhelming. Or working out. Start with one thing: run up and down your stairs every day. You don't have to be like, I'm going to go get a gym membership and I'm going to do this and then you're overwhelmed and you quit.
What about gravy? Is that a sauce?
Yeah.
So biscuits and gravy is nice.
And depending, it's technically that would be
sauce.
That would be like a bechamel. But depending on who you are and what ethnicity you are, a gravy means totally different things. Because to some people, gravy is a red sauce. Italians, mom's made gravy Sunday dinner, and then some people, gravy is like red eye gravy with brown and super salty, tasty over ham. And then, of course, you've got biscuits and gravy, which I love and I still make to this day because I figured out how to make it lower sodium.
It is delicious. Stephanie says red wine sauces trigger her migraines.
Yep. It's pretty common a lot of times with wine that does red wines and stuff like that with gout and migraines. And there's people that are super sensitive to, I forget what the technical term is in it, but whatever chemical compound in those wines that cause people to have migraines. It's pretty common, sadly. So
it is.
Skip the red wine, stick to white wine or something else.
Which is always fun.
Right.
And then as you kept rolling on and we moved from sauces, you and Pete did a show about diets and doctors.
Yeah. See, I hate the word diet. I don't know. It just seems to be this evil word. And I turn bits in the cooking pan. Oh, that's Stan. Hey, Stan.
Yeah. So he says, I turn all the bits from pan cooking my meat into a sauce gravy. That's cool, Stan. I mean, do you add wine to those bits and pieces, or
I'm guessing a stock.
A stock.
I'm guessing a stock. Yeah, because that's a pretty common way to add or to create a gravy or just add milk, straight up milk.
Just add the milk.
Lately I've been using heavy cream because I can use less of it and it's still the same amount of sodium.
Yep.
But the diets, there's this Southwest diets, Mediterranean diets, keto diets, gluten-free diets, sugar-free diets. There's about a bazillion diets. Some of them are legit that are for people who have diseases or illness. Like the keto diet does serve a purpose. Mm-hmm. There are people who need to be on that. But then they get glorified and people get annoyed by it. So when you have a chef like, yeah, sure, it's gluten-free. And they didn't add any gluten, but they used it in a gluten pan. And now somebody who actually has celiac sprue gets super sick because they were told it was gluten-free and it's not gluten-free or sugar-free. And somebody gets sugar and they have a diabetic overdose. And I just hate the word diet. If you want to change, you need to change your lifestyle.
That's a big thing. And that's why this, of course, is called
My LoSo Lifestyle.
My LoSo Lifestyle, right here on 21.6. Of course, as you're listening to 21.6 Annette, our good friends over at Advanced Pain Rehab, 224-623-1599, www.advancedpainrehab.com. Patients come to Advanced Rehab for a variety of concerns. Thanks to the versatility and art of the microcurrent and voila method, Advanced Pain is able to serve patients with exceptional results that are tailored to their lifestyle. Speaking of lifestyles, Advanced Pain Rehab, 224-623-1599. Check them out at www.advancedpainrehab.com. And our good friends over at Prime Media Consulting, LLC, 847-752-0018, or check them out at www.primemediaconsulting.com. Ever wonder why your website's not showing up online where you want it to be? Want to make sure you're found when someone's searching for your kind of business? Well, Prime Media Consulting helps small business owners optimize their exposure on major search engines to transform their business. You're looking for a great 2020, call Prime Media Consulting LLC today at 847-752-0018 or reach out to us at primemediaconsulting.com and learn how we can help make your impression on the web. And of course, end of year was last week, actually the beginning of this week, but check out Mobile Accounting, 224-321-6859 or www.mobile.tax. Experience, education, character, an inherent ability with numbers, an exceptional CPA. These are the reasons why business owners choose Eric Mason of Mobile Accounting for their bookkeeping, payroll, and tax services. Mobile Accounting, 224-321-6859 or www.mobile.tax. Diets.
Yeah, they suck.
Well, the interesting thing is, to your point, is it's not a lifestyle change.
Mm-mm.
It's a quick hit. It's like a hairdo. Right. So when I was a kid, the mullet was a fantastic hairdo.
My husband had that.
Right. And then I went from the mullet to a flat top. And then I went from a flat top to the young Republican pull over the side. And then I went
I'm
from
envisioning all of these in my
then I
head
went
right
from
now.
that just to the buzz.
Oh.
And now for the last, almost, the last 21, 22 years, I've looked like this. Right. But it's interesting because as diets change, my lifestyle has kind of changed, remained the same, but my look. Right. So bald is now a lifestyle for me.
And that's
not necessarily by choice.
Right. But that's the thing is, and we use a lot in training at work, and we call it a culture.
Yeah. So
when you create that lifestyle or that culture in your household, if you create a culture of trying new things, or, the dinner table is a thing. Like with me and my husband, we actually sit down and have dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I have my cell phone there and he yells at me every once in a while, but I also have a job. And if someone needs something at my work, but if you texted me and I'm eating dinner, I'm going to go, okay, that's not an emergency. I saw it. It's done. You see so many people at the dinner table, or not even that. They're just everybody, the cell phone culture. Oh. You're distracted. Take 2 seconds. And I saw something fantastic. I was at my friend's house, and she has this little mason jar on her table. And it's conversation starters because she has 2 young boys. So instead of how was your day? It was fine. Because that's what you're going to get from a 10-year-old.
That's right.
You pull something out of the conversation starter, and what did you do? And that's the lifestyle change that she made to have a better conversation with her kids. No phones, no nothing, no devices, no anything at the table. So that culture of getting and gathering around food that so many people have set over a lifetime, like Italians with their dinner on Sundays, that lifestyle, you'll never know anything different. So when you create that, I'm going to eat better and eat real food, or I'm going to eat less sugar. Yeah. When you create that lifestyle, anywhere I can go, and that's why I can tell you what's in anything that I eat, because that's my life. It's not a diet that I'm forced to.
It's interesting, but we've done that. My family has done that forever.
Right.
And so when friends come over, or boyfriends or whatever, and we all sit down at the table, sometimes you get to look like, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm. This is new. Okay. And it's almost awkward.
Yeah. But that's where we talk about the day. There are no cell phones.
Right.
So it's really fun.
And it's amazing the connections that you make in actually paying attention to someone for 2 seconds. And I see it, and I hate that. I mean, I know this is off on a tangent. It's not really low sodium, but my husband and I were talking about this because when I interview people, and they, like, their first job, they don't know how to interact with people because their entire life is via text message and phones. So they're like yelling at me. So I never did this. It's like, wow, you're really awkward because they don't talk to people
exactly
in their real life. It's terrifying.
It's like back in the cave time. Nora, good to have you with us, Nora.
Nora, actually, I think my dad found through ancestry.com.
Oh, wonderful. Look at that.
Neat connections.
People always say if you're changing that lifestyle, then you have to get used to not having salt.
Right. And I think it's funny because that just tells me that you must feed your infant children salt. Like, we talked about putting handfuls of salt on the cooking shows. When you make food for a 2-year-old, do you salt it? You make soup or you make baby food. Do you throw a handful of salt in your carrots before you puree them for your kid?
Right.
It's like you got a 3-year-old sitting in a high chair, and do you hand them a salt shaker or a pepper shaker or seasoning of any kind? You look at them like, you're going to eat this. Here's whatever glop I put on your plate, or a piece of toast, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Eat it. So it's not until you get older that you get accustomed to having salt. So you're just getting accustomed to not having it as you did as a child. You don't need, I mean, you need sodium, but you can get it from the food you eat. You don't
Absolutely.
have to add the salt.
Right. And that's what I've been finding out over the last 4 months of your show, and really listening and following it is that's it. So now you taste everything, and when you stop throwing a bunch of salt on stuff, you know,
can taste food.
You go to McDonald's to get those French fries, and they turn you inside out.
Right.
That's all you can really taste.
Right. It
is the salt on those things.
You know what's funny about that is once my palate changed, and it took a few weeks, and I started tasting food, and I can taste the difference in potatoes. You wouldn't think you could, like red potato, white potato, whatever. You just get a potato. And speaking of McDonald's, there's like 16 different kinds of potato ground up to make their French fries to get that perfect flavor that they want for their French fries. And when you stop having salt and you can taste food, and everybody's palate is different. So some people that, if you have sinus issues or you're a smoker or whatever, you may not be able to taste anything ever. My husband can smell everything. He's like a bloodhound. Ever since he quit smoking, he can probably smell you here at the studio from his house down. It's just insane. So everybody's different. But when your palate changes, you can start to actually taste food, and it's fantastic.
That's wild. Well, it's kind of like, I've had a lot of friends who have quit smoking who said the same thing. It's like, oh, I forgot how
I couldn't eat anything for weeks.
Tasted.
Everything was, when I quit smoking, the world smelled horrid to me. I could smell things, I could taste things, and everything was disgusting. I was like, oh, I'm going to get a taco. This is gross. I'm like, I've been eating this, and my senses were so overwhelmed by the fact that I could taste something other than a cigarette. It was insane. So I did. I lost like 15 pounds after I quit smoking because I couldn't eat anything. Everything was disgusting. And of course that went away.
What about like seasoning salt, Lowry? There's a lot of things out there, garlic salt, seasoning salt, those type of things.
They're all loaded. They're so loaded with, and they're good. They're tasty.
Oh, yeah.
That's why people use them. But even garlic salt, you can buy, Lowry's came out with low sodium garlic salt, which I do use because to put it on something like a tomato, where I've talked about, there's certain things you just can't. If you grew up salting watermelon or salting tomatoes, there's nothing that's going to substitute salt. You can substitute salt in a sauce with an acid or something else. But some things you just have to have a sprinkle of salt. So those kinds of things, like with the pink salt, because they're bigger flakes, a little bit goes a long way. So you can use it more sparingly and still get that sensation. And like I say, not set yourself up for failure because you're going to want it and have 6 tablespoons of something. But yeah, it's sadly any kind of seasoning packet is.
Yeah.
When I made the dip for you guys and actually looked at the back, because I never thought to look at the back of a seasoning packet, was like, holy cow, this is like, what's 1/10 of a tablespoon? How do you eat eat that?
Yeah. Alex says his wife is the same way, as a super sniffer. She smells everything. It's a real challenge in our relationship.
That's funny.
Yeah. No. What? Where?
Yeah. Right.
Where have you been?
What were you doing? Yeah. No.
Right. Were you at Oberweis having more ice cream?
Oh, every day in my house. What does that smell? You smell that? What is it? I don't smell anything. I smell nothing. I don't know what you're smelling. No one died. Nothing happened. You're not having a stroke. Just move on. And
so we rolled out of the holiday season, and of course, you had talked about be aware of hidden salt bombs like mashed potatoes. Don't be afraid to ask and things like that. I'd be interested to see if anybody out there followed through on that. But people really salt their mashed potatoes before they put them out on the table.
All of the time. It's the same as you salt the water. So you can actually use a potato. So if you ever made a chili or a soup and you taste it, you're like, oh, I way over salted this. I totally over seasoned it. What do? Throw a potato in it. The potato actually sucks up the salt and reduces it doesn't reduce the sodium in your dish, but it does take out the salty flavor, and you can salvage a dish. I've done it a million times when I've over seasoned something.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah.
Well, if you season something with salt and then you use a salted stock and you have a brined bird, and the next thing you know, you're like, holy crap, why is this so salty? Well, that's why. So when you have something like mashed potatoes, you need to add a lot of salt to have it be seasoned because of the fact that it absorbs it. So you do put like a 1/4 cup of salt into boiling water to boil your potatoes. That is common practice.
I don't do that.
So I got
we just throw them in the water.
I do not. Well, now I boil it with garlic.
Oh,
I throw garlic cloves in there. Yeah. My mom loves KFC. Absolutely loves KFC. So anytime I go out there, I get her KFC. And I made her a plate the other day. Literally 2 days ago, I stopped by. And I put everything. Of course, I got a spoonful of, half mashed potatoes, half macaroni and cheese that I'm going to throw in the thing. So, of course, what do? You lick the spoon. And I about puked. I was like, this is my niece looks at me. She's like, is there something wrong with it? No, I think it burnt my tongue.
So much salt.
It was so salty.
Oh my gosh.
It was cloying. It was just like this. It was unbelievable. It literally almost burnt my tongue. It had so much salt on it. But it is fairly common practice, especially in restaurants, because if they don't have seasoned food, people aren't going to come.
Right.
So unless they know that that's what they're getting, if you're going for heart healthy and you already have an unsalted palate, you could have a successful restaurant. But if the average person is going to get steak and potatoes, they want it seasoned. And if you don't, then you're going to get Facebooked and Yammer, Yahooed and whatever to death that it's horribly unseasoned food.
Alex from Huntley says, I just learned you put butter and water together when you boil potatoes.
You can. It doesn't really do a whole lot.
Oh, I've never done that.
I do it afterwards.
I'm a guy. I put the potatoes in the water, I boil it, and then when they're ready, I drain the water, and then add a little milk and mash away.
Grate some garlic cloves in that and put some red pepper flake, and it's fantastic.
Ooh, I will try that.
Or a tub of mascarpone.
Just make this so creamy and delicious. Oh my gosh.
You can turn it into palms a la goat.
In fact, I saw somebody on Facebook asking who had the best mashed potatoes around.
Yeah, I think I saw that recently. That would be my house. You can go to my house. I have the best mashed potatoes around. Especially if you add some Swiss cheese and put little panko crumbs on top and bake it. That's good stuff.
So now we're getting into the time of year where churches, schools start having their potlucks, end of season potlucks, potluck. You're always going to find your green bean casserole there. You're going to find somebody brings a fried chicken, that
wings and meatballs and all that stuff.
So do you eat before you go to those things, or what do you do?
Thankfully, most times there is a veggie tray. So you can eat something, unless you're like Pete, who won't eat vegetables, you're screwed. But sadly, most potlucks, unless people are educated and they're your friends, I actually once a month, me and my girlfriends get together and we play games, and it's a potluck. The host always cooks, nice. And it's like, dips and meatballs or chicken tacos or something like that. And it's funny because since all of this happened to me, my friends are extremely supportive. And they will, the night before when they're shopping for this, I'll get text messages. What was that salsa that you buy? Or what potato chips do you buy? Or if I make it this way, is it okay for you to eat? I want you to be able to eat something. And I've told them a million times, like, I'll be fine. If I can't eat anything that night, I'm not going to starve to death.
Right.
But they're very good friends, and they want to make sure that I can enjoy the evening just like everybody else. So I've actually inherently made them more salt conscious, and discovered there's actually a couple girls in my group that have to watch their sodium as well, which is pretty funny.
Peter is a large child.
Aren't all men large children? I don't think
it
that's
was Rachel
just
Ray.
Peter.
Rachel Ray taught him that butter and water in the boiling water.
Yeah, well, I don't put it in the water. I just put it on afterwards because the butter just floats to the top. It doesn't really absorb into the potatoes.
One nice thing I like about Rachel Ray is she's got that old-fashioned refrigerator like Mr. Rogers.
I know. It's beautiful. Really cool. It's actually a really nice fridge.
It is.
I like old stuff.
Me too.
It works. It doesn't fall apart.
Canning, freezing, and food tracking, big deals nowadays as people are looking to change their lifestyle.
I think that, canning is something that you have to learn. And there's a lot of opinions about canning because, there's old school that people have been canning for generations. And then there's someone else that says you can't do that because it's going to kill you. And how do you tell someone that's been canning, a potato recipe or a beef or pork or something for the last 10 generations and nobody's ever gotten sick and they eat it every year, that they're doing it wrong?
Right.
Obviously something is being done right.
Yep.
So let them do it. Like, just keep your mouth shut and move on. If you don't want to do it that way, then don't do it that way. Freezing, I mean, there's some things that just don't freeze, like eggs. They just don't. Egg sauces split, and eggs themselves, the texture changes and it just is gross. But just about everything else you can freeze. There's a lot of stuff. And like with me cooking this past weekend, when I go home after the show today, I'm going to prep everything because it's all the sauces and stuff is made. I just have to assemble it, put it in the baggies and put it in the freezer. It's good for months.
Sure.
And it doesn't really degrade. The nutrient value kind of loses over time, but everything else pretty much stays the same.
And I think what you have to be prepared for, and my sister-in-law talked a little bit about this, is, if you're just the amount, if you're canning, especially sauce, if you're making a sauce, you're going through a ton of tomatoes if you're making a red sauce. And
I don't think people realize how much.
She's like, I worked on this for 8 hours. I went through so many tomatoes, and it made like two jars.
Oh, that's when I make my jam. I came home. I have a picture somewhere in my counter was just full of berries. And of course, my husband walks around the corner and goes, "What the hell are you making today? Like, why? What is going on?" And my whole counter is full of all it because they were on sale and they're usually really expensive. So I said, I'm going to make some jam. So I made my jam through the whole process, and he loves to help. He's like, all right, we're making jam today. So let's make some jam. And he comes in and I'm done. And there's like 4 little jars on the counter. And he's like, so what's next? We got round 2 or what? No, that's all of it.
There, do it.
Seriously? Like all day long, all this stirring, all of this mess, all of these tools, utensils, strainers,
sweating,
sifters, everything. You got burns. There's jam on the ceiling. Like, it's everywhere. And
your co-host says, I ate cheesy noodles yesterday. They had jalapeno in them. Yeah. Plus they were yellow.
So that's a vegetable in his mind.
That's right.
He had vegetables is what he's saying. That's too funny. I make macaroni and cheese every once in a while for my husband, and it's high on the end for me, but I still make it in a way that's low sodium so that we can have it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he eats the crap out of it, especially in the summertime because we grow habaneros and jalapenos. And this year, our jalapenos, I think I brought you guys some pickled jalapenos. It was like a tree. Like legitimately, he was worried that something was wrong with it because the stalk was woody like a tree. And he's like, it might come back next year. We don't know. But he does the same thing with the macaroni and cheese with habaneros. Yes. But tracking your food. So I talk about it. And I say that I do it, and I ask people who do it and what they use. And I think that I'm going to have a show coming up here soon about it specifically because I don't think people see the importance of it and the benefit from it. And I think more people should do it, and not from an aspect, and you and I were talking about this, of counting calories necessarily.
Right.
Or being fat or not fat or losing weight, but just to see what you eat and what you consume.
Yeah.
Because I think people will be shocked where they think, oh, I eat too much sugar. Well, you probably don't eat as much as you think you do, but you probably don't eat enough fiber or way too much fiber. And if you're looking at any number of things that you have, any ailment, if you go to the bathroom too much or too little, if you get headaches or migraines, if you have skin issues, all of these things usually weigh down to something in your diet. Almost always.
That's it.
Yeah.
And let's, what I'd love to in 2020 is a show, just if you do that, not necessarily tracking, but understanding, paying attention to what you eat and what it does to your body.
Right.
Heartburn is not right. There's no such thing as a good, heartburn's not a good thing.
Right.
And you can't just say, well, I'm getting older.
Right.
And so I should have it.
Right. It's not true.
There's no good symptom, I guess. Right.
Right. And it's usually as you grow and as you age, the processes in your body change. Your metabolism changes. And my father and I had a conversation about this once, about the beneficial bacteria in your gut. And everybody talks about your biome health, which is essentially the beneficial bacteria in your body. We live a symbiotic relationship with a ton of parasites and don't even know it. A ton of antibodies and antibiotics and all of these things that are in our body and on our body, that it's generations and generations are there for a reason. So if you're starting to take all of this stuff that's over the counter to kill those things, to combat things like acid reflux, when you could just change your diet.
Yeah.
Something as simple as, instead of drinking coffee, drink iced coffee. It's less acidic, it's less harmful on your stomach, and a little bit of research would tell you can still have your coffee.
Yeah.
It's just in a different form.
That's it.
So,
well, and I paid a lot of attention to that over the last month, just because all the sweets and things. And I noticed the white breads, the gluten-y things. If I stay away from the gluten, I don't get the acid reflux that it would wake me up in the middle of the night choking. Right?
I'm really excited. And here's a little trick. If you lay on your left side, it reduces your acid reflux.
Right.
If you lay on your right side, it increases your acid reflux. It just has to do with the positioning of your stomach and the way things actually go. So if you have a heartburn issue, if you lay on your left side, it does help. But coming up here in the next couple weeks, I have a show with Kim Nordine. She's from Joyfully Well. She's a good friend of mine. And she mills her own flour and makes her bread, which is not in itself all that shocking. But the things that I've learned from her because of this, and then inherently, one of my other friends, Carrie from my store, they discovered, because their family is gluten sensitive, in the pizza shop that they used to own, if they milled their own flour, it has less gluten, because you're getting the whole flour. You're getting the whole kernel, the whole seed, the whole whatever, versus getting, processed, where it's eliminating all of these, kind of like juice. If you juice an orange, you just have the sugar in the water. Yeah. You get rid of the fiber and a ton of good stuff, and it absorbs into your body differently. And they discovered if they milled their own flour, there was less of a reaction to gluten. So I'm really excited about that show, because I actually get to go and mill flour and bake with her and bring you guys some milled baked bread. So it's going to be fantastic.
That'll be really, really cool.
Yeah.
Invisible illness. You and Pete did a show on invisible illness,
which is essentially is what I have. I actually have two invisible illnesses. If you walk up, and even family and friends say it all the time, you're looking pretty good. Well, I am, but actually today's a really shitty day. I'm just not going to tell you about that.
Right.
The days that my liver wants to crawl through my rib cage, or my spine is acting up. But unless you tell people about it, they're not going to know. And if you don't want to tell people about it, then don't tell people about it. But don't piss and moan that people are bending over backwards for you when you didn't tell them about it. You can't have it both ways.
Right.
So there's a lot of invisible illnesses. I mean, even cancers and things like that. You don't, just by looking at someone, unless they're falling apart, you don't know what they have. So if you want people to accommodate you, then educate them. Just don't be a dick about it and expect people.
Well, and here's what I would tell people who come up to you and say, "Hey, you're looking pretty good today."
Yeah.
If you've ever been to an open casket funeral,
right?
They go, "Oh, they look good."
Right.
No, they look dead.
Right. They look make-upped.
So
they look.
So if somebody comes up and says, "Hey, you look pretty good today,"
right?
And that's where they leave it. Just understand what they're saying.
Right.
You look dead.
Right. That's what's so. It's my other question is, well, if I look good today, so are you just telling me I look like shit all the time?
Right,
like,
I haven't.
So I saw you a week ago. You didn't say it a week ago.
Right.
Are you just telling me that I looked like crap last week, and this week I'm looking pretty good? It's like,
Absolutely.
I mean, come on.
Absolutely. And of course, I think that I think the exciting thing is about what you do too is you look in the mirror. You're not comparing yourself to anybody else.
Right.
And that's a tough thing to do because when you're talking about a lifestyle, I might go, "Oh my gosh, look how great Mary looks. And I'm still a fat slob. This lifestyle isn't for me."
Mm-hmm.
But it could be, I could have a lot of changes that are already occurring and things that are happening. So I think it's important as we talk about lifestyle is I should never compare myself with anybody else.
And you really shouldn't. I mean, you have nothing to prove. You don't have it. You're going to be your own worst critic, no matter what. It doesn't matter how good or bad you look or what you're going through. You could be, the Brad Pitt or whoever of the world and perfect body and looking great. And you have a team of people that help you do so, but you're still I can guarantee you, he still looks in the mirror every once in a while and goes, "Holy crap, this looks like it's getting old," or "There's a wrinkle here, or there's a whatever here."
Sure.
There, you can't compare yourself to other people because you don't know what they're going through.
Right.
And when people tell me that, you're so strong, you're going through so much. I have two things. I have liver disease and I have transverse myelitis. I have a lesion on my spine. There's so many people that have so much more.
Right.
I have a house. I have a husband. I have friends. I have a radio show. I have a job. I got a million things and I'm still walking. A lot of people with transverse myelitis are paralyzed from the word go. So if you switch your perspective and stop comparing yourself to what others have or don't have, and just focus on you.
Yeah.
And if that, like you said, if that lifestyle isn't working for you, if you don't want to be fat, then don't be fat.
Right.
But if you're going to be content with your lifestyle and your marriage and your wife and your kids, and you're happy eating donuts and you're happy being 10 pounds overweight, then by all means, there's no reason that you should accept judgment from anybody else for being happy.
That's it.
It's your own lifestyle.
That's it.
Live it.
That's it. All right. So as we're in the last 2.5 minutes, next week, got a great show coming up, right?
Dr. Ron Masakawa. I just call him Doc.
Yeah.
I literally I've been going to Dr. Ron for over 20 years. He's become a very good friend of mine. I brought him some food last week just because, and he does chiropractic and acupuncture care. And his acupuncture is what keeps me walking. And the chiropractic adjustments, when my muscles, because of my spine, pull on my back, I literally can't breathe.
Oof.
So we're going to talk about a holistic approach and answer some questions, because there's a lot of common questions about, do needles hurt and acupuncture and this, that, and the other. And if it doesn't work for you, then just whatever, don't watch.
I had a good friend who did acupuncture, and because I had migraines, he'd do it right in my skull. I mean, I don't have any hair, so I look like Hellraiser.
Oh, same. I sent a picture to my friend, and she's like, "Are those needles?" And they're literally like, you can see them.
Yeah, twitching.
And there's all over my head.
It's
and
great.
I had 2 right here in my cheeks, which I don't really much care for because they hurt. But he sticks me. I tell him what's wrong. I literally go in there and just tell him what's wrong, and he sticks me full of needles. Says, "All right, you cook." Yeah, right. That's it. But yeah, so it'll be exciting. We'll have him on next week, and then the week after is Kim Nordine, and then we got a few after that. So we got some exciting shows.
And here's what we're going to say. In 2020, we want this show to be about you guys. Ask us questions. Send questions in.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
Where can they send their questions to?
My LoSo LifeStyle. You can send it to my Facebook page. Obviously, you can always email the station, download the app for the station so that you can listen anytime. You don't have to watch it on Facebook. You can download the app, support the station. It's a huge thing. But yes, definitely. My LoSo LifeStyle on Facebook. When you send me the feedback and send me the questions, I'll do the research and we'll have a show about it, because I want it to be more about a lifestyle, not just, hey, here's a low salt recipe for potatoes. It's an entire lifestyle change to live with a disease that makes you change everything, whether you like it or not. So it's going to be a lot more about that than just, here's a recipe that doesn't have sodium in it. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to 2020. We got a lot of guests too.
It's going to be great. We hope that we're able to touch you and
hey, no, I'm not touching anybody.
And change your lifestyle for the coming up year. So
change your perspectives.
That's going to do it for us this week. Sitting in for Peter Galt, I'm Kent Jones.
Thank you for sitting in. Appreciate it.
She's We'll just do a little music play out here. Until next week, same bat time, same low sodium channel. We'll see. Just said good music for cooking.
I'm going to have to Google it. I'll have to cook something. My friend's going to be like, what do you do? What do you